Send a unit immediately. There's a trespasser destroying community property at 2114 Crystal Springs.
That's what the HOA president told the 911 dispatcher Saturday morning. The trespasser was my wife, Dee. The community property was the milkweed plant she was setting in the soil at the front of our own house. She had been a master gardener for 15 years and a certified pollinator habitat steward for 9. She was kneeling in jeans on the gravel of her own front bed when Daphne Whitcomb made the call. Daphne did not know who she was calling about. She did not know that I had been listening to my own dispatch radio from the kitchen 40 feet away. She did not know that the 2 deputies the dispatcher would send were ones I had personally hired in 2018 and 2021. So I didn't drive over. I walked out the front door. I stood beside my wife. I waited for my deputies. Tell me, would you have spoken first or let them snap to attention on their own? My name is Bo Tillery, and I live with my wife Dee at 2147 Crystal Springs Drive in Cherokee County, Georgia, about 40 minutes north of Atlanta. The house is a brick, 4-bedroom on a 3rd-acre lot in a gated subdivision called Crystal Springs Estates. We bought it 2 years ago, the spring before I started my 3rd elected term as Cherokee County Sheriff. I have been with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office for 29 years. I started as a deputy at 22. I made sergeant at 30. I made captain at 38. I was first elected sheriff at 41. My 3rd term began in January of last year. I will run for a 4th in November. I grew up in Canton, Georgia. I went to North Cobb High School. I went on to West Georgia for my undergraduate degree in criminal justice. I earned my master's at Kennesaw State, online, while working night patrol shifts and helping Dee raise our 2 kids. Caroline is 24 now and works as a nonprofit fundraiser in Atlanta. Wyatt is 21 and a junior at Auburn. My wife Dee is 48. Her full name is Deirdre Ann Tillery. She has been a registered nurse at Northside Hospital Cherokee in Canton for 19 years. She works the day shift in pediatric oncology. She is the calmest person on her unit and the calmest person I have ever met outside a hospital. She is also the most stubborn gardener in Cherokee County. Dee was certified as a Georgia Master Gardener in 2010. She was certified as a Xerxes Society Pollinator Habitat Steward in 2016. She has served on the Cherokee County Master Gardener Council since 2018. She had her own 1/4-acre native plant nursery at our previous house in Canton, until we sold that house in 2023. When we moved into Crystal Springs Estates, the first thing she did was order 360 native pollinator plugs from a wholesale nursery in Tifton. The plugs included swamp milkweed, butterfly weed, mountain mint, purple coneflower, eastern bee balm, and woodland phlox. She planted the back half-acre as a certified monarch way station in the summer of 2023. She planted the front beds in the spring of 2024. The garden was beautiful. The garden was legal. The garden was federally protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act because it provided documented habitat for monarch butterflies and 7 species of native songbirds. The HOA did not see any of that. The HOA saw a yard that was not Bermuda grass. The first violation notice arrived in our mailbox in May 2024. Cream paper, brown ink, the signature of Madam President, Daphne Whitcomb. The letter informed us that the non-conforming naturalistic landscaping at the front of our property violated Crystal Springs Estates Aesthetic Standards Section 9.3. The bylaw required all exposed lawn areas to be maintained in continuous Bermuda or zoysia turf at a height not exceeding 3 inches. The letter directed us to remove the native plantings and resod within 30 days. It assessed an interim fine of $100 per day until compliance. Dee read the letter twice on the porch with her coffee. She handed it to me when I came home from the office that evening. Bo, read this and tell me whether your county lets people pull up monarch way station habitat with no permit. Dee, my county does not. Bo, the HOA seems to think theirs does. I read the letter. I read the cited bylaw. I read the response Dee was already drafting in her head. Dee, write the response. Cite the federal statute. I will not get involved in the official correspondence. This is your garden. This is your fight. She nodded. She refilled my coffee. She started typing the letter at the kitchen table that evening, at 7:30. Dee's response letter went out by certified mail Wednesday morning. The letter was 3 pages and citation perfect. It cited Georgia Code annotated 44-5-60, which protects landscaping that conforms to recognized environmental conservation programs. It cited the Federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act and the Bilateral Conservation Agreement with Mexico. It cited the Endangered Species Act and the Federal Monarch Butterfly Listing Process. It enclosed copies of Dee's Master Gardener certification, her Xerces Society Pollinator Habitat certification, the Monarch Way Station registration number, and a notarized statement from the Cherokee County Extension Office documenting the ecological value of the planting plan. Dee delivered the letter to the Crystal Springs Estates HOA office Wednesday afternoon. The young woman at the desk read the cover sheet, her eyebrows lifting at the federal statutory citations, and offered Dee a cup of coffee. Dee accepted. Daphne Whitcomb's response took 9 days. It came in the form of a denial letter, signed personally by Madam President. The letter denied the federal preemption argument on the grounds that private community covenants supersede federal environmental claims when applied to residential aesthetics. That is not a true statement of law. It directed Dee to remove the native plantings within 30 days. It increased the interim fine to $150 per day until compliance. Dee read the letter once. She drove down to the Cherokee County Extension Office on her lunch hour and met with the Master Gardener supervisor, a woman named Cosima Drennan. Cosima had been an extension agent for 31 years. Cosima read Daphne's letter twice. Dee, this is one of the worst legal arguments I have ever read in 11 years of HOA disputes. We are going to back you. The Cherokee County Master Gardener Council will issue a formal letter Friday. The Master Gardener Council letter went out Friday afternoon. It was signed by all 11 council members. It documented the ecological value of Dee's planting plan in technical detail. It cited 14 separate Georgia, federal, and international conservation statutes that applied. It offered to provide an expert witness in any administrative or legal proceeding the HOA wished to initiate. Daphne Whitcomb did not initiate any proceeding. Daphne escalated. The next monthly issue of the Crystal Springs Estates Community Newsletter, a glossy production Daphne wrote and edited herself, contained a one-page editorial titled Maintaining the Aesthetic Character of Crystal Springs in a Changing Era. The editorial did not name us. It did not need to. It described an unnamed front yard owner whose weed-style overgrowth was depressing surrounding property values and attracting pests. It urged the community to stand united for the established standards that protect every family's investment. Dee read the newsletter on the front porch with her coffee. She handed it to me when I came home from the office that evening. Bo, she's calling the monarch caterpillars pests. She is. Bo, are you going to do anything? Dee, I cannot get involved in the official correspondence. I can sit on this porch with you. I can watch the cameras at our front gate. I can stay out of your way. Bo, that is exactly what I need you to do. The next Saturday, Daphne walked across the cul-de-sac with a clipboard at 9 in the morning. Dee was in the back, planting more milkweed plugs. I was in the kitchen with my coffee and the dispatch radio. Daphne knocked on the front door. Dee did not answer immediately. Daphne knocked again. I watched on the doorbell camera. When Dee finally walked around from the backyard with dirt on her gardening gloves, Daphne held out the clipboard. Mrs. Tillery, I need you to sign an acknowledgement that the daily fine has reached $4,500 and that the HOA will be filing a lien against the property at the 60-day mark. Mrs. Whitcomb, I am not signing anything. The fine is unenforceable. The bylaw is preempted by federal law. You have my certified mail letter and the Master Gardener Council letter. Have a nice morning. Dee turned around and walked back to the backyard. Daphne stood on our front porch with her clipboard for a long second. She did not knock again. She walked back across the cul-de-sac to her own house at 2152. I watched her go. By the second weekend in August, Daphne Whitcomb had personally walked across the cul-de-sac 11 times. Each visit was a different pretext. The first was the lien acknowledgement. The second was a neighborly conversation about community spirit. The third was a request for voluntary compliance pending appeal. The fourth was a printed petition Daphne had circulated among 12 other Crystal Springs households who had agreed, under Daphne's polite social pressure, to sign a statement supporting the HOA's enforcement action. The fifth was an offer to personally arrange and pay for the resodding if Dee would sign a release. Dee did not sign a release. The seventh visit was different. Daphne brought her husband Hayden Whitcomb that time. Hayden ran a regional commercial landscaping company called Whitcomb Premier Landscapes. Hayden's company held the contract to maintain every common area lawn at Crystal Springs Estates. Hayden suggested, in soft, business-like tones, that his crew could handle the conversion at no cost to the family the following Tuesday morning. Dee thanked him. Dee told him no. Hayden did not press. Hayden looked at his wife the way husbands look at wives when they have already lost the argument at the kitchen table the night before. Hayden walked back across the cul-de-sac with Daphne in silence. The 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th visits were Daphne alone, on increasingly hot afternoons, with increasingly tight smiles. Hannelore Stensland walked over from 2161 on the Tuesday after the 11th visit. Hannelore was the HOA treasurer. She was 62. She had moved to Crystal Springs Estates in 2019 with her late husband, who had passed of pancreatic cancer in 2022. She had been on the board for 3 years. She had voted with Daphne on every previous compliance matter. She had never voted against Daphne until the September emergency meeting at which the board had unanimously, except for Hannelore, ratified the lien process against our property. Hannelore brought a tin of her late mother's Pfeffernuss cookies and a yellow legal pad full of names. D. There are at least 9 households at Crystal Springs that have been bullied by Daphne over yard standards in the last 6 years. I have been keeping a list since I joined the board. 3 of those households moved out under sustained pressure. 2 paid fines totaling more than $9,000 combined. 1 was an elderly couple with a vegetable garden in their front yard. 1 was a family with a small wildlife habitat for their autistic son's therapy. 1 was a black family who had planted ornamental sweet potato vines that Daphne had cited as thematically inconsistent with community heritage. I think you and I need to talk. Dee made Hannelore tea. They talked for 2.5 hours. By the end of the afternoon, Dee had a complete list of every household at Crystal Springs Estates that had been targeted by Daphne over yard or landscape compliance in the past 6 years. She had Hannelore's signed witness statement. She had Hannelore's phone, which contained 6 months of board email correspondence, in which Daphne had openly discussed her plans to drive non-conforming households out of the community. Dee called Cosima Drennan at the extension office that evening at 6:30. Cosima listened for 10 minutes. Dee, this has officially crossed from a yard dispute into a pattern of community harassment. I am going to make some phone calls. I would like you to come to a meeting at the extension office Friday morning at 8. I will have Beatrix Lockhart from the county solicitor's office. I will have Pierce Crowley from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. I will have Easton Northcott from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I would like to ask Bo to come too, but only as your husband, not as the sheriff. Dee thanked her. Dee told her Bo would be there. I came home from the office at 7:15. Dee told me everything she had spent the day learning. Bo, I want you to come to the meeting Friday morning. Dee, I will be there. Bo, not as the sheriff. Dee, as your husband. She refilled my coffee. We sat on the back porch and watched the monarchs dance over the milkweed until the light went down. The Cherokee County Cooperative Extension Office on Marietta Highway opened at 7:30 Friday morning. Cosima Drennan met us at the front door at 7:45 with 3 thermoses of coffee. Beatrix Lockhart from the Cherokee County Solicitor's Office arrived at 7:52. She was 46. She had been a county prosecutor for 19 years. She had been the lead solicitor for 4. She had a reputation in North Georgia for handling HOA cases with a quiet, careful patience that made HOA presidents wish they had not picked the fight. Pierce Crowley, from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, arrived at 7:58. He was a senior special agent assigned to the White-Collar Crimes Division of the GBI Atlanta Field Office. He had personally prosecuted 4 HOA financial fraud cases in North Georgia counties since 2019. Easton Northcott from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Atlanta Field Office arrived at 8:03. He was a senior environmental compliance investigator. He had spent the previous 12 years enforcing the Migratory Bird Treaty Act and federal pollinator habitat protection statutes across the southeastern United States. The 5 of us sat at the long conference table at the back of the extension office. Dee laid out everything: the certified letter chain with the HOA, the Master Gardener Council letter, Daphne's 11 personal visits, Hannelore Stensland's signed witness statement, the list of 9 other targeted households, the board email correspondence, the newsletter editorials, the lien threat, Daphne's husband Hayden's commercial landscaping interest in the HOA's compliance enforcement. Easton Northcott spoke first. Mrs. Tillery, The federal preemption argument is unambiguous. The Migratory Bird Treaty Act and the federal monarch listing process protect your front yard plantings against any private community enforcement action. The HOA cannot legally fine you a single dollar. We can file a federal notice of violation against the HOA on environmental grounds within 10 business days. Pierce Crowley spoke second. On the GBI side, the financial pattern is more interesting. Daphne Whitcomb is paid as HOA president. Her husband's commercial landscaping company holds the exclusive HOA contract. The fines collected from targeted households over 6 years have flowed through accounts that need to be examined under Georgia Code Title 16, Chapter 9, on commercial bribery and fraud against community trust. Beatrix Lockhart spoke third. On the county side, I am prepared to open a formal investigation of the Crystal Springs Estates HOA financial practices and discrimination patterns. I am prepared to coordinate with the GBI, the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Federal Fair Housing Act Enforcement Office at HUD Atlanta on a multi-agency action. Cosima Drennan spoke fourth. On the Extension Office side, the Master Gardener Council is prepared to issue formal expert witness reports and to mobilize the Cherokee County Volunteer Corps to physically protect your garden if Daphne attempts any direct removal action. I sat at the end of the table and listened. Beatrix Lockhart looked at me last. Sheriff, I have not asked anything of you yet. I would like to ask one thing now. When the time comes for the multi-agency action, I would like the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office to assist with formal service. Not because the sheriff is involved in your wife's case, because the Sheriff's Office has jurisdiction over criminal trespass, harassment, and assault complaints, and the pattern Daphne Whitcomb is establishing may eventually rise to those charges. I thought for a long second. Beatrix. The Cherokee County Sheriff's Office will respond to any 911 call from any address in this county exactly the way it has always responded. I will not assign deputies to my own neighborhood for any reason. I will not interfere with normal dispatch protocols. If any deputy is dispatched to my house for any reason, that deputy will report to Captain Reggie Strathmore, not to me. Captain Strathmore will report to the solicitor's office, not to me. Beatrix nodded. That is exactly what I was going to ask. Easton Northcott set his coffee down. Folks, I would like to file the federal notice of violation by next Friday. I would like to have the GBI investigation open by the following Monday. I would like to have the solicitor's office formal investigation open by the following Wednesday. We can have multi-agency action ready to coordinate by mid-October. The 4 agencies signed off. Dee and I drove home at 10:30 Friday morning. The next compliance letter from Daphne Whitcomb was already in our mailbox. The next compliance letter was a different letter than any of the previous 9. It was 3 pages, notarized, and sent by certified mail with priority routing. The letter informed Dee that she was, effective immediately, barred from the Crystal Springs Estates Community Pool, the Community Fitness Center, the Community Clubhouse, and the Community Walking Trail. The bar was based on her ongoing willful non-compliance with community aesthetic standards. The bar would remain in effect until Dee signed the lien acknowledgement Daphne had attempted to deliver 11 times in person. The letter was countersigned by every member of the HOA board, except Hannelore Stensland. Dee read the letter twice on the porch with her coffee. She handed it to me. Bo, she is barring me from the pool because of milkweed. D. She is barring you from the pool because she is losing the argument, and she does not know what else to do. Bo. Caroline was supposed to come up next weekend with her boyfriend. We were going to take them to the pool. D. I will explain it to Caroline. Pierce Crowley called me at the office Monday morning at 9. Sheriff, we need to expand the GBI investigation beyond Crystal Springs Estates. Pierce, tell me. Daphne Whitcomb is the HOA president of Crystal Springs Estates. She is also the paid compliance consultant for 3 other HOAs in Cherokee County under a personal services arrangement. The 3 other HOAs are Northwood Glen, Hickory Trace, and River Mill Crossing. The financial pattern across all 4 communities is identical. Hayden's Commercial Landscaping Company holds the exclusive turf maintenance contract at all 4. The HOA compliance fines collected against targeted households at all 4 have flowed through the same shell accounts. The total billed fines across the 4 communities over 6 years exceed $340,000. Hayden's company has billed an additional $1.1 million in remediation services at the same 4 communities over the same period. I sat very still in my office. Pierce, How many other targeted households? Sheriff, we have identified 23. 6 were elderly residents with food gardens. 4 were families with disabled children whose accommodations were fined as aesthetic non-conformance. 3 were black families whose plantings were cited as thematically inconsistent. 2 were Hispanic families whose front yard altars were cited as religious display violations. 1 was a same-sex couple whose pride flag was cited as unauthorized signage. 7 were retired residents on fixed incomes who could not afford to fight the fines. I thought about my wife's pollinator garden. I thought about Hannelor's Pfeffernuss cookies. I thought about Carolyn's boyfriend, who Dee had been excited to introduce to the neighborhood. Pierce, what do you need from the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office? Sheriff, I need you to keep doing exactly what you have been doing. Stay out of your wife's case. Let your deputies respond to whatever 911 call eventually comes. Let Captain Strathmore handle the chain of custody on whatever evidence we end up with. The case is best made if you are the one element of the system that does not bend. Pierce, done. Sheriff, one more thing. Beatrix and I expect Daphne to escalate one more time. We expect her to call 911 within the next 2 weeks, claiming your wife is violating some criminal statute. When that call comes, we will be ready. I hung up the phone. I closed the door of my office. I sat at my desk for a long minute. I was the elected sheriff of Cherokee County. I was about to watch the woman across the cul-de-sac call my own deputies on my own wife. I called Dee at the hospital. Dee, Pierce called. The case is bigger than Crystal Springs. There are 4 HOAs, 23 families. Pierce thinks Daphne will call 911 on you within 2 weeks. Bo, what do I do? Dee, you keep planting. You keep watering. You keep being who you are. The deputies will arrive when she calls. They will do their job. I will be where I need to be. Bo, where do you need to be? Dee, beside you in the yard, without my badge. The next 10 days were the strangest 10 days of my marriage. I went to work every morning at 7. I left the office every evening at 6. I did not discuss my wife's HOA case with any deputy, with any member of my command staff, or with any sheriff's office personnel except Captain Reggie Strathmore. Captain Strathmore was my second in command and my closest friend on the force. We had ridden patrol together for 9 years before I was first elected. He had been my chief deputy since 2019. I told Reggie everything in his office Tuesday afternoon at 5. Reggie, Pierce thinks Daphne will call 911 on Dee within 2 weeks. Sheriff, then she will. Reggie, when she does, the responding deputies will report to you, not to me. Sheriff, I have already drafted the standing order. I will issue it Wednesday morning. It will go to every patrol shift supervisor. The order will direct that any 911 call originating from a Crystal Springs Estates address involving the Tillery residents or the Tillery family is to be handled with normal protocols, but with chain of custody routed through me directly. You will not be informed in advance. You will not be consulted during the response. You will be a private citizen at the scene, like any other husband. Reggie, thank you. Sheriff, don't thank me. Thank Dee. She is the one who is going to be in the yard when they pull up. Pierce Crowley and Beatrix Lockhart and Easton Northcott met 3 times the following week at the extension office. Cosima Drennan attended every meeting. Hannelore Stensland attended the second and third. The team finalized the multi-agency federal notice of violation. They finalized the GBI financial fraud preliminary report. They finalized the county solicitor's discrimination pattern complaint. They finalized the warrants. They prepared the protective coordination for the moment Daphne placed the 911 call. By the end of the second week, every piece was in place except Daphne's call. Dee planted 40 more milkweed plugs the second Saturday morning at 8. She wore the wide-brimmed straw hat I had bought her at the Cherokee County Master Gardener plant sale in 2017. She wore her husband's old Carolina blue Carolina Tar Heels t-shirt that had a small bleach stain near the collar. She wore the gardening gloves Caroline had given her for Mother's Day in 2021. I made coffee at 7:30. I sat at the kitchen table with the dispatch radio on low, listening to the routine Cherokee County morning chatter, a traffic stop on Highway 20, a welfare check at a nursing home in Canton, a noise complaint at a construction site in Holly Springs. At 10:08 Saturday morning, the dispatch radio went quiet for 1 full second. Then it crackled. Cherokee Central to all units in Sector 4. Possession or vandalism of community property reported at 2147 Crystal Springs Drive. Caller advises ongoing situation. 2 units to respond. Code 2. The address was my address. I set my coffee down on the kitchen table. I did not pick up the radio. I did not call the dispatch. I did not call Captain Reggie Strathmore. I had agreed with Reggie I would not. I walked to the kitchen window. I looked out at the front yard. Dee was kneeling in the gravel of the front bed with a milkweed plug in one hand and a small trowel in the other. Her straw hat was tilted forward against the morning sun. Daphne Whitcomb was walking across the cul-de-sac toward our front lawn, with her cell phone still pressed to her ear. Behind Daphne walked her husband Hayden. Behind Hayden walked the HOA Vice President Tatum Bridgewater. Behind Tatum walked Caspian Pendarvis from the secretary's seat. 4 adults from the HOA board, walking across our cul-de-sac toward my wife on a Saturday morning at 10:09. I picked up my service belt from the kitchen counter. I did not put it on. I set it back down on the counter. I walked out the front door without my badge. I stood beside my wife. Dee looked up from the milkweed plug. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hi, Dee. You're not at work." "Dee, I am at home today." She set the plug down in the soil. She patted the dirt around it. She stood up. She brushed off her gardening gloves. Daphne Whitcomb walked up the front walk with the phone still pressed to her ear. "Mrs. Tillery, you need to step away from the planting bed and step into the cul-de-sac. We have called the sheriff." Dee did not step anywhere. "Mrs. Whitcomb, I do not need to step anywhere. This is my front bed. This is my plant. This is my soil. You are standing on my walk." "Mrs. Tillery, step into the cul-de-sac." Hayden Whitcomb walked up the front walk behind Daphne. His face was the face of a man who had said no to his wife at the kitchen table the night before and lost the argument again. He stopped 6 feet behind Daphne and did not say anything. Tatum Bridgewater walked up the front walk behind Hayden. Tatum was 58, a regional commercial real estate developer, and the HOA vice president. He had a clipboard and a small video camera. Caspian Pendarvis walked up behind Tatum. Caspian was 44, a sales manager at a luxury auto dealership in Roswell, and the HOA secretary. He had nothing in his hands. His eyes did not look comfortable. Daphne held up the phone. "Mrs. Tillery, the sheriff is dispatching units. You can either step away from the planting bed voluntarily, or you can be arrested for community property vandalism." I stepped forward beside my wife. I was in jeans, a Carolina blue Carolina Tar Heels t-shirt that matched the one Dee was wearing because we had bought matching shirts at the 1995 ACC tournament, and the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office gym socks I had been wearing around the kitchen all morning. I did not have my badge. I did not have my service weapon. I did not have my radio. I had a coffee cup in my left hand. Daphne saw me for the first time. She had seen me before, of course. She had seen me 11 previous times in the past 4 months when she had walked across the cul-de-sac to harass my wife. She had never seen me on the front lawn, standing beside my wife, while she was on the phone with 911. She squinted at me. "Mr. Tillery, you should also step into the cul-de-sac. You are interfering with an official HOA enforcement action." "Daphne, I am Beau Tillery. I live at this address. I am standing in my own front yard with my own wife. I am not interfering with anything. I am drinking coffee." "Mr. Tillery, please step into the cul-de-sac. The sheriff has been called." "Daphne, the sheriff has indeed been called. 2 deputies are dispatching from the Canton substation. Their estimated arrival time is approximately 7 minutes. I would like you to remain on my front lawn for the duration of those 7 minutes. I would like you to keep telling me about my wife's planting bed." Daphne's face did something complicated. Hayden Whitcomb took a small step backward. Tatum Bridgewater set his clipboard down on the gravel. Caspian Pendarvis turned and walked back across the cul-de-sac to his own house at 2178 without saying a word. Dee looked at me. She did not say anything. She picked up another milkweed plug. She knelt back down in the planting bed. She set the plug into the soil with her trowel. She patted the dirt around it. The monarch caterpillar she had been watching for 3 days crawled across her gardening glove and onto the new milkweed plant. Daphne stood on our front walk with her phone still pressed to her ear and her face slowly losing its color. The first siren in the distance came in from Highway 20 at 10:13 Saturday morning. The second siren came in from Marietta Highway 30 seconds after the first. I sipped my coffee. I did not move from beside my wife. The first patrol vehicle turned onto Crystal Springs Drive at 10:15. The second patrol vehicle was about 10 seconds behind it. The first patrol vehicle was a 2022 Ford Police Interceptor in Cherokee County Sheriff's Office white and gold. It pulled to the curb at the head of the cul-de-sac at 10:15 exactly. The driver was Deputy Trent Mosley. Trent Mosley was 28. I had personally interviewed him for the deputy position in the spring of 2018. I had ridden with him on his first night patrol shift the week he graduated from the academy. I had recommended him for the patrol training officer role he now held. He stepped out of the patrol vehicle in his Cherokee County uniform, with his right hand resting on his service belt. The second patrol vehicle was a 2021 Chevrolet Tahoe in the same Cherokee County livery. It pulled in behind Trent at 10:15 and 12 seconds. The driver was Deputy Holland Crockett. Holland Crockett was 33. I had personally promoted her from patrol to investigations and back to patrol again at her own request after she had her second child in 2021. I had attended the baptism of that child at First Baptist Canton in November of that year. She stepped out of the Tahoe in her Cherokee County uniform, with her right hand resting on her service belt. Trent walked up the front walk first. Holland walked behind him. Their patrol vehicles were behind them with their light bars rotating, but their sirens off. Trent stopped at the edge of the gravel of our front bed. He saw Dee first. He saw Dee in jeans and a wide-brimmed straw hat with dirt on her gardening gloves and a milkweed plug in her hand. He did not yet recognize her. He had met Dee at the sheriff's office Christmas party 4 years ago. He had met her again at the Memorial Day picnic last May. But Trent had not yet, at 10:15 and 23 seconds Saturday morning, registered the face of the woman in the planting bed as the face of his sheriff's wife. He saw Daphne second. He saw the phone still in her hand. He saw the clipboard Tatum Bridgewater had set down on the gravel. He saw Hayden Whitcomb standing 6 feet behind his wife. He saw me third. I was in jeans, the Tar Heels t-shirt, no badge, no weapon, no radio, with a coffee cup in my left hand. Trent Mosley's face did something I will remember for the rest of my career. The recognition came in stages. First, his eyes registered the t-shirt. He had seen me wear that exact t-shirt at the 2022 Sheriff's Office staff retreat at Lake Lanier. Then his eyes registered the coffee cup. He had drunk coffee at the office out of cups exactly like that one for 6 years. Then his eyes registered my face. He stopped walking. Holland Crockett, who was a step behind Trent, also stopped walking. Holland's face did the same thing Trent's had done. Her eyes registered the t-shirt. Her eyes registered the coffee cup. Her eyes registered my face. Both deputies stopped at the edge of the gravel of our front bed. Both deputies stood at attention. Both deputies brought their right hands up in a clean, sharp, simultaneous Cherokee County Sheriff's Office salute. Sheriff. Sheriff. I did not return the salute. I was not in uniform. I had no authority to return a salute. I was a private citizen standing in his own yard beside his own wife. I nodded once at each deputy. Trent. Holland, good morning. Daphne. Hayden Whitcomb, who had been 6 feet behind his wife the entire time, took 2 more steps backward and quietly walked off our property and back across the cul-de-sac toward his own driveway. Tatum Bridgewater picked up his clipboard and walked back across the cul-de-sac after Hayden. Daphne. Trent. Ma'am, I am Deputy Trent Mosley with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office. I responded to a 911 call placed from this address at 10:08, reporting community property vandalism. Can you tell me what your role here is? Daphne's mouth moved twice. No sound came out. Trent Mosley waited for Daphne to find words. She did not find them. Holland Crockett walked over to where Dee was kneeling in the planting bed. Holland did not touch the milkweed plug. Holland knelt down beside Dee. Holland's voice was the quiet voice of a deputy who had decided to ask the simple question first. Ma'am, are you the homeowner at this address? Yes, deputy. My name is Deirdre Tillery. I am the homeowner. The plant in my hand is swamp milkweed. I purchased it from a wholesale nursery in Tifton in March. I am setting it in soil on my own property as part of a federally registered Monarch way station. I am not vandalizing anything. Holland Crockett looked at Daphne. Ma'am, I am going to need to see your identification. I am also going to need a statement from you about the basis for the 911 call you placed at 10:08. Daphne's mouth moved a third time. This time, it produced a sound. My name is Daphne Whitcomb. I am the president of the Crystal Springs Estates Homeowners Association. The plant Mrs. Tillery is setting in the soil violates Section 9.3 of the community bylaws. The HOA has been pursuing compliance enforcement for 4 months. Ma'am, the 911 call you placed at 10:08 reported community property vandalism, not bylaw enforcement. Did you knowingly mischaracterize the nature of the situation when you spoke to the dispatcher? Daphne did not answer. The first unmarked vehicle turned the corner onto Crystal Springs Drive at 10:21 Saturday morning. It was a black Ford Escape with Cherokee County Solicitor's Office plates. Beatrix Lockhart was driving. Beatrix parked behind Holland Crockett's Tahoe. Beatrix walked up the front walk in a charcoal pantsuit with a leather courier bag over her right shoulder. The second unmarked vehicle was a maroon Chevy Suburban with Georgia Bureau of Investigation plates. Pierce Crowley was driving. Pierce parked behind Beatrix. Pierce walked up the front walk in plain clothes with a manila folder. The third unmarked vehicle was a green Ford Explorer with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service plates. Easton Northcott was driving. Easton parked behind Pierce. Easton walked up the front walk in a federal khaki uniform with the FWS shoulder patch. The fourth vehicle was a white WXI ATV satellite truck. It parked at the curb across the street. Imogen Hollister stepped out with two camera operators. Imogen had been a senior assignment producer at WXIA Atlanta for 15 years. She had personally covered 11 of my Cherokee County Sheriff's Office press conferences. Beatrix Lockhart stopped 6 feet from Daphne Whitcomb. Mrs. Whitcomb, I am Beatrix Lockhart, Cherokee County Solicitor. I am here this morning to formally serve you with 3 documents. She held out the first. This is a notice of Cherokee County Solicitor's Office investigation into the Crystal Springs Estates Homeowners Association financial practices and discrimination patterns over the past 6 years. This is a notice of Georgia Bureau of investigation into the financial relationship between the Crystal Springs Estates Homeowners Association compliance fines and Whitcomb Premier Landscapes commercial revenues over the past 6 years. Easton Northcott held out the third. This is a federal notice of violation issued by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service against the Crystal Springs Estates Homeowners Association for attempted enforcement actions that violate the Federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act and federal pollinator habitat protection statutes. Daphne did not take any of the documents. Trent Mosley stepped forward. Ma'am, beyond the civil and administrative actions just served, the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office is opening an investigation into the false 911 call placed at 10:08 this morning. Filing a false police report under Georgia Code 161026 is a misdemeanor. You are not under arrest at this time. You will be receiving a formal interview request within 48 hours. Imogen Hollister's WXIA cameras were rolling. I stepped forward, quietly, beside my wife. I did not raise my voice. Daphne, 2 of my deputies just saluted me on my own front lawn. 3 state and federal agencies just served you on the same lawn. The cameras are rolling. The fines are unenforceable. The garden is staying. None of this had to happen. She set it back into the soil. The monarch caterpillar she had been watching crawled across her gardening glove and onto the new plant. The state criminal indictment of Daphne Whitcomb came down 4 months later. Filing a false police report. Filing 11 additional false compliance reports across 4 HOAs. Conspiring with Whitcomb Premier Landscapes in a commercial bribery scheme. Violating the Georgia Fair Housing Act in 5 separate instances of discrimination based on race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and disability status. The federal civil case followed 3 weeks later. Daphne Whitcomb pleaded out 5 months after the indictments. 28 months in state custody, 3 years of supervised probation, full restitution of $348,000 to the 23 affected families across 4 communities. Permanent bar from holding any HOA officer position in the state of Georgia. The Crystal Springs Estates Homeowners Association called a special election the month after the federal settlement. Hannelore Stensland ran unopposed for HOA president. She won by acclamation. Her first official act was to dissolve Section 9.3 of the bylaws. She replaced it with a 1-paragraph clause requiring the board to comply with all federal Environmental and Fair Housing Act protections. The other 3 HOAs Daphne had managed reformed their own governance within 6 months. The compliance fines collected over 6 years were refunded to every targeted family. D received a personal civil settlement of $172,000 from the consent decree allocation. Each of the other 22 affected families received between $40,000 and $95,000. Dee and I used most of our settlement on one project. The Dee Tillery Pollinator Garden Trust opened its doors in Canton in March. The trust does three things. It plants and maintains certified pollinator gardens at any Cherokee County home, school, church, or community center, free of charge. It funds an annual environmental science scholarship for 2 graduating Cherokee County seniors pursuing degrees in horticulture, conservation biology, or environmental law. And it provides free legal aid to any North Georgia family whose pollinator garden is challenged by an HOA. Dee chairs the board. I won the November election with 67% of the vote. Carolyn came up from Atlanta the second weekend of October with her boyfriend, whose name is Wesley. Carolyn introduced Wesley to Dee in the front yard, beside the milkweed bed. That evening, Carolyn told Dee that Wesley had proposed on the front porch, with the monarchs dancing over the bed. We started something else, too. The first Saturday of every September is now the Cherokee County Monarch Festival at our front yard. We open the gate. We pull out the long tables under the pin oaks. The Master Gardener Council runs the seedling exchange. Hannelore Stenslin runs the Pfeffernuss cookie table. Captain Reggie Strathmore runs the kid wagon ride along the safe stretch of the cul-de-sac. About 500 neighbors come through every September now. Last September, a kid about 10 years old asked me whether the milkweed plant in the front bed was the one from the news video. I told him it was. He asked me if his school could plant a monarch way station. I told him we would plant it for them, free of charge, through the trust his school had told him about. If this story made you angry, drop a comment below with your own HOA nightmare. I read every one. If it made you smile, share it with somebody who needs to hear that the loud folks don't always win. And if you enjoy this kind of story, slow-built, well-prepared, and finished by people who refuse to give up, hit subscribe. The next one is about an HOA Karen who told a Vietnam veteran his American flag had to come down. The retired JAG officer next door had been quietly photographing every notice for 14 months. I'll see you next week.
What gets me about Tabitha Worshman isn't the greed, it's the timing. She knew exactly what she was doing when she sent that flatbed at 5:32 on a Saturday morning. She knew there was a wedding arch in that truck bed. She knew her neighbor was about to walk his fiancée down an aisle her father had spent 2 years in physical therapy to walk her down. She did it anyway. That is what these schemes always come down to. People who have been told no for so long that they no longer recognize a wedding day when they see one. What broke her wasn't the multi-agency walk to the door. It wasn't even the 15-month expired commercial towing license. It was that Knox Aldridge had been a Marine combat engineer for 8 years. He understood that you do not win these fights by yelling on your wedding morning. You win them by letting the other person hook your truck to a chain that is already attached to a federal recording device. If a so-called community board has ever leaned on you the way Tabitha leaned on Knox, drop your story below. I read every single one. Hit subscribe because next week we are walking onto the front yard of a Vietnam veteran. The morning, the HOA president fined him $90 a day for the American flag flying over his late son's headstone. The retired JAG officer next door had been quietly photographing every notice for 14 months. Don't miss it.